Welcome to My View from the Piano Bench. We do this on Wednesday evenings at 7 p.m. here on my Joel Holt's Notes YouTube channel, in addition to Piano for My Friends on Thursday evenings. On Wednesdays, I move the phone camera closer to me. You don't see as much of the piano, but it's a little less relevant. And for better or worse, could be worse, hope not, I'll do a lot more talking on Wednesday nights about a topic, something unique to either my experience or my outlook on things, sharing for both musicians and non-musicians alike, hopefully. So thank you for the continued opportunity, particularly to those of you who support and encourage me via the links you'll find on the support page of my website, and you'll see a link to that page in the video description. Poke around my website while you're there. If you do click on the link, you can access anything else on the site. And any consideration, particularly if you watch regularly, is very much appreciated. Drops in the tip jar, which is what the support page on my website details, different options for that, is in effect what sponsors these videos and keeps me going. So thanks again. So each week I take a topic, and in contrast to how I started doing this, where I kind of like wrote a lecture and played a lot and just tried to keep it cohesive in some way, I just let myself go now. Just a general topic. The topic may actually not seem general. Sometimes it'll be the title of a song, and maybe I'll talk about the song. Maybe I'll talk about something the song takes me to. I just leave my mind open. I do have a bit of an idea of where this is going to go. It kind of takes me into an area that I didn't think about talking about, but I do think about. And this is in response to, an email from, you, because the person who is watching the email is certainly watching. So someone in this community has been in touch with me, and we have some email exchanges about what he finds interesting in my piano playing, and particularly, and I've talked about this before, that he feels that the melody is always accessible when I play. And he took it to the point of controversy. And I encountered this with the first person I shared this with, another musician who looked at it differently. The controversy was that I'm the person who keeps the melody accessible, in jazz, more than anybody else that he's encountered. And I take that to mean, or be the result of the fact that I don't depart from the melodic structure and the related harmonic structure of a song like contemporary jazz does. And I think it's in part being old school. That's not the only thing, but I think that's a large part of it. And then recently, a few weeks ago, I received another email, and this allows me to take this from a different angle, and you'll see that the topic is listed as hum a few bars. And you may think of the line that I think of when I hear that. The rest of it is, and I'll fake it, right? Hum a few bars and I'll fake it. It's like, oh, I don't know that tune, but let me see. Hum a few bars and I'll fake it. Ah! And you get a sense of where things are, and unless the tune is like complicated or has an unforeseen curveball, a lot of times the musician's ears can stay on it and do it. That's actually not what I mean, but it seemed like a good phrase to bring this up and to tie to this email. So this person is talking about that, and then asks the question, how? Why do I find that the melody is always there, present, when you are improvising on a tune? What is it that makes the melody so easily to be reached in the background, always at the tip of a humming? I found the answer. The metric is effort. It is the effort I have to go through to keep the melody in sync in my mind while you, or anyone else for that matter, improvises. You see, when some musicians improvise, and I try to mentally hum the song in my mind, I may lose track of where we are. Well, actually, where I am. In other words, it takes a big, large effort to keep my mind synchronized with the musician's playing. Conversely, when you improvise and I hum the tune, either making the sound or muted, we are completely in sync, no effort. So when you go back to the song to finish the performance, my humming is also back to the song at exactly the same point that you're playing it. So I hope this makes sense. So here is a suggestion for a future My View from the Piano Bench. How does Joe Holt keep track of the tune when he's improvising? Is it the chords? Is it timing? Is it a marker note in the tune's melody? Is it something else? Very interesting questions. And I'm going to take this a bit of a direction that he did not intend, perhaps. But I'm also going to try to answer the questions. And what this does is this opens up to me kind of a repressed, I don't want to say feeling, but a repressed experience, or experience that keeps popping up, but I don't think about when it doesn't pop up. And that is when I'm aware that somebody else is humming the melody while I'm playing, and humming it audibly enough that I can hear it. And apart from the potential distraction, because I'm pretty good at working around potential distractions or real distractions, but the need to do that in certain circumstances, particularly a musician that you're working with on stage, is problematic to me a little bit. But let's back up. How do you keep track of a tune while it's going on if you need to keep track of it? Hum the melody. So this person is right on point, because the melody is what everything comes from. The melody is a single line of notes. It contains specific notes. It contains specific rhythms, or at least approximate rhythms. Often contains words, and that's it. And anything else that is played is derived from the melody. It's not the case, which, well, these days it kind of is a little bit, which is part of what's wrong with some types of popular music, particularly with young people coming up, because the foundation isn't there to be able to deal with and exploit the nuances in harmony and things related to the melody that's implicit there. So you just, you get the chord and you get the melody and you just go. In my world, no. It's that the melody tells you what's going to work. And when a song is written, and it's written with a prescribed harmony, right? Once that song is out there, as long as that harmony works, and that implies, of course, that more than one harmony is going to work. But there will be one, this is a bit arguable, but I'll say it, there will be one, collection of chords, harmonic arrangement that really best suits the song, I'll say it this way, as the composer intended. For example, I've been working with Beth McDonald for over 20 years, who's at least 20 years, who is a fantastic, highly gifted, really as deep as they come songwriter. Someday, a lot of people will know about her. But right now, she's my friend. Well, she'll always be my friend. That wasn't the point. And she is very specific. about the harmony that she wants under her. And she, unlike me, when she has a musical idea, it stays in her head. It's fixed. And there can be 14 different chords that will work just fine, potentially, in a particular place in a song. If I play anything but the one she wants to hear, nope, not that one, this one. And sometimes, because my memory is conceptual, I'll remember like the meaning of the chord that goes there and not necessarily the exact chord. Without getting too theoretically wonky, an example would be, I talked about 1451 last week, right? Getting to know you. Didn't talk about that. Well, that 4 chord, that chord that travels, the chord that you're moving through to get to the 5 chord, the chord of highest tension that makes you resolve, right? That 4 chord can be interchanged with other chords that do the same thing, or just colored slightly differently, different shade. You know, you exchange the green sweater for a brown sweater, or something like that. Why did I pick those colors? I don't know. So instead of 1, 4, 5, 1, you have 1, 2. And the only reason you really even notice it is because I changed the bass note. Here's that's your basic way of doing it. C, F, G, 7, C. Here is substituting D minor for F. Or D minor 7. And the bass note really brings it out. I could do things, well, like I play the F bass note with the D minor 7 chord. That sounds a lot like 1451, but not exactly. But we're not going down that rabbit hole. I'm saying that to illustrate there is great nuance that you can do here. But when Beth writes a song, if she, and she'll go either way. She doesn't have a fix, she's not formulaic. So she might write a 2, 5, 1, and then some other phrase might be a 4, 5, 1. Now that's oversimplifying it, but that's still like true, among other things, but that's an example of it. And my line is that I forget whether I should 2 or 4. I 4'd when I should have 2'd, I 2'd when I should have 4'd. And of course, whenever I do the wrong one, no matter what's going on, I get this little, twitch like it. No. I mean, she's good about it, but she knows what she wants because it is a defined thing, and that's what a real songwriter will do. And so there is an original conception of the song. Now, songs were written a long time ago. In some cases, that's gotten lost. But there's also the mindset of some people who will go and will look for what seems to be the original composer's intent. But it's all very subtle, But the point is that there is a correct harmony. Right? But there's also correct alternate harmonies, as long as everybody agrees to it, right? But in the context of the question of my friend here, there will come a point in looking at alternatives where the harmony that you play will work. It will be just fine, but it won't be necessarily directly related to the original harmony. They're called secondary relationships, where you can build like interest, harmonic interest, more kind of action, more tension release schemes going on. And then you do that and it still supports the melody. But Once that melody goes away and you're improvising over something that you've changed, that's going to limit the access you have to the melody. It's going to make it a little harder, just like was written here. And the thing, in my perception, that really distinguishes contemporary jazz from more traditional jazz, or the traditions of jazz, is the idea of reharmonization. And I don't even think I'm going to attempt it here. I'm just going to talk about it. Where you wind up going for the cool sound as opposed to going for, I was going to say what supports the melody, because you can argue the cool sound also supports the melody. But what puts the melody in central focus all the time? And that is not the contemporary jazz mindset. So here's something that just made me think of. I'm going to comment on a jazz recording that I've never heard. But because of what I suspect is going on, and then maybe somebody who has heard it, or I can listen to it later, can tell me if I'm right. So my friend Paul Mediri really likes Hank Jones, the pianist. And apparently Hank Jones did a recording of all like hymns. And Paul said that when he got the recording, Hank Jones just played it rather straight. He never really improvised on the hymns. And he was a little thrown by that, and maybe even a little disappointed. And I thought about it and said, well, wait a minute now. You know, Hank Jones is, I mean, he's certainly steeped in the traditions of jazz, but he would be considered, you know, understanding the contemporary thing and being part of that, you know, being a contemporary musician of his time, not just a throwback, right? And what defines contemporary jazz is pushing the harmonic envelope. And for pianists in particular, and this is the thing I pretty much don't do. And I don't do it because of the mental effort it requires or it necessitates. And my game's not a mental game. And if I find it intuitively, great. But if I'm like working out the pieces in order to get something, you know, that's not where I'm going to go the deepest. And that's just what I've learned about myself. But I suggested to Paul that he probably did improvise the heck out of it. That it was probably all harmonic. It was probably all in the reharmonizations. And you can really stretch where the harmony goes in a tune and still make it work with a melody. In fact, you can really stretch it far. You can stretch it to the point, it's not too difficult to do this, you know, if you're inclined, that if you don't play the melody and you just play the reharmonization, you might not know what the melody is supposed to be. So, to my friend's point here, if he does know what the melody is supposed to be because the tune's already defined, and then you go through all this reharmonization stuff, you can still sing the melody, it will still fit, but it's not, it's far afield from what, if nothing else, is standard operating procedure for that melody. And it can really mess up the ear. It can be difficult. Well, here's something in my experience, a friend of mine, who's a singer, we'll talk about, and actually I can have this discussion with any singer. When somebody's playing behind them, if they could reharmonize the song, the piano player, to the point where they might have trouble hearing what the melody is they're supposed to sing. And some people, you know, musicians do that on purpose. It almost becomes, I don't want to say a contest or game, but it's just like this is what jazz is about. It's pushing the envelope. It's having that cool sound, and then figure out what you're supposed to sing over that. Or the other side would be, and I'm stepping into what would be a controversial topic among musicians. The other side would be, oh, the melody's in there. You just have to know where it is. But to my friend's point here, that's all far afield. It's just like the tune is the tune, and when I play, he doesn't have trouble finding it. And he says, ever. And I say, cool. Because, I don't think my playing is, I hate talking about myself like this. I'm going to do it, though, because nobody else is here to talk. I don't think my playing is, lame or boring or anything like that. It is certainly not harmonically adventurous, because I don't think that. I don't do the math. I can't keep math straight in my head. And so, yeah, for me, the melody's always going to be accessible. And if I want to just keep myself out of it and just state the circumstance, I could say that this person feels the way they do or experiences what they do because I'm an old school player. I have the older sensibilities of not completely but completely ringing through a hand crank washer, the clothing, so it looks like something else, but it's still the clothing, right? But in addition to that, I think that I prioritize the melody within me, not necessarily in terms of what I play, but what I reference. And because of what I reference when I play, that melody is always going to be close by. It's going to be accessible. It's going to be able to be found. It makes sense to me that this person says this, because it's right there alongside of me all the time. I never leave it. In contrast to what contemporary jazz is, which is all about playing over the chord changes. And even if you're not a musician, if you watch jazz education videos, you're going to say 67 exercises to play over 2-5-1 in 12 keys. Well, you say something like that, 2-5-1, which I actually demonstrated. But that's a theoretical concept. It's actually not a song. It's a part of every song, but it's not a song, right? It's like the sentence structure of a particular, concept or phrase that repeats all over the place, but in different configurations and in different ways. But it's a particular, concept. So what jazz will do is practice over that recurring thing, so you always have stuff to play when that comes up. But now what you're doing is you're playing to the chord progression. You're not playing to the melody. And my big problem is that I just can't remember chord progressions. Now, I'm fine playing over chord progressions and having no melody to reference if it's in front of me and I can look at it, even if it's a tune I played a million times. Because, I can respond to that and not necessarily do the math, but, I have something to reference. It's an alternative reference for me. But without the chords in front of me, then all I have is the melody. And if I have to tell somebody what a chord is that I'm playing any given moment, the easiest way for me to do it is to stop and then turn my brain back on, click, let it warm up because it's a slow brain, and then look at what I'm playing. It's okay, well, that's a D6-9 there. Of course, if it takes me 3 or 4 seconds to get there, I could be 2 measures down the road and just late for dinner and everything else with that. So I'm just randomly now playing Don't Blame Me, which I'm not sure it's the best tune, but think I actually played the melody wrong because I didn't hear it correctly. But now I'll support it with some harmony, which would be pretty much true to the original harmony. Now I should make a distinction. I'm not talking about chord extensions. I'm not talking about thickness of chords necessarily. I'm talking about the definition of the chord. Like, who's the guy inside the sweater? Or girl? Start wandering away from the melody, but not from the harmony, or not far. So I got myself a little tangled up at one point because I was consciously, and of course when I'm thinking about playing, it's not that those thoughts are not my friends oftentimes, but I was consciously trying not to play the notes of the melody in the improvisation. I did it a little bit, but then one time toward the end I got right on top of it, and it's like, oh, I didn't want to do that. But I'm going to assume, at least if nobody else, one person, you know who you are, probably humming the melody along. And feel free, if you want, to comment and say that you could find the melody. And I imagine you could, because the melody was guiding me, even if I was playing a different melody. If that makes sense. So, how do you know where you are when you're playing a tune? Well, you're going to be connected with the melody. And one way to connect with the melody without being able to find the melody is with the lyrics, if the song has lyrics. And if you can speak the lyrics of a tune, even if the melody is all obscured, you'll know where you are, because there's that rhythmic component as well, right? And I haven't really ever thought about what does a musician do to keep track of a tune, because in my world, you wind up being able to do what you do because you've done it a zillion times. You live there. And that's how jazz was passed on and practiced, and everything for the first 30 years or so, or 30 40 years of jazz, somewhere in that range, until it began to become academic. Before it was academic, you just knew where you were, just like in a reasonable, conversation, without someone like me who just like speaks about 17 subjects at once and sometimes doesn't find his way back. In normal conversation, you always know where you are. You know what you're talking about, because there's a structure to it that we're connected to. What makes songs easier in a way, but really more than anything similar to speech, is the structures that are repeatable and you learn what they are. But in our verbal conversation, those sentence structures and language structures, they're repeatable, they're organized, they're very theoretically constructed. We don't think about them theoretically when we speak. That wouldn't work. But that theoretical analysis can be made after the fact, which music theory needs to be approached like that, a theoretical analysis after the fact. I know that I repeat things that I've said before, so those of you who watch me every week sometimes hear the same stuff. I try to avoid it, but then I try not to, because not everybody watches every week and things are appropriate in different applications. But one example I'll probably always come back to was when I saw an interview of Esmeralda Spalding, and the interviewer thought he was being hip and was asking, well, what mode were you thinking of when you composed this particular variation on this thing? And she's like, I don't know. Maybe somebody can listen to it and tell me what I did. Which sounds flippant, or it sounds like cute, or it sounds like, similar to a line that Victor Borge might use. But actually, I think it was just sincere. It's like, I just did it. I didn't do it via math. The math comes later. The analysis comes later. None of the classical composers, had a music theory scorecard with chord scale relationships. Now, there are certainly defined relationships there, and Beethoven was aware of them, but it wasn't through the formula that these things were composed. These are just part of a musician's vocabulary, just like words are part of our, verbal or spoken vocabulary, and we know how to use them. The added, though, piece of a song is a defined form. And this is something that maybe my friend can think of. So many songs, not all, but many, particularly Great American Songbook era songs, use what they call song form. And song form is 32 measures. A, B, A. Now, there could be contrivances where the amount of measures will be doubled or the amount of measures will be cut in half. But the relationship of 8, 8, 8, 8, 3 A's and 1 B, A, B, A, 8 measures for A, 8 measures for B, 8 measures, 8 for A, 8 for A again, or A1, 8 for B, 8 for A3. But those A's are all almost the same. Sometimes they have to be a little different to take you someplace differently at the end. But that relationship of those 4 equal sections is your typical song. And when you hear musicians talk about the bridge, or some say the channel, and you'll see me, or people on stage with me do this all the time. Well, not all the time. And this means steal home. But no, it tells you to go to the bridge. Because like sometimes when you're playing a tune and you want to get out more quickly, you're at the last chorus, you don't have to state the first 2 A's, you just go to the bridge. right? And if you have some awareness of that form actually structures you. You know, you can sort of feel your way through it, and when you're at the bridge. So one thing, if you're a more casual listener of music, and you, now I was going to say Stardust, but I don't think Stardust has a bridge. I think it's more of an AA, because I said there's lots of exceptions. But let me play this tune. That was the first day. Different lyrics, but the same music. I held my breath and said, may I have the next one? Yeah. Now we finished out 8 measures, but I played something different to set me up, because now I'm going to that contrasting bridge. Which is actually even a different key. Modulates back, and now I'm at the last A. It sounds like the first two, but different words. Now when the garden filled with lilacs and laughter, I know the meaning of the words ever after. Something like that. So now if I improvise, now I'm at the bridge. So I went through my 2 A's, and then now I'm at the contrasting section. So one thing that you can do if you want to keep track of a tune is like start listening for the bridge. And this is more like for non-musicians or musicians, anybody. Listen for the bridge. Notice when the thing changes and there's a contrasting section. And if you can hear where that starts, you know you're halfway through the tune, most of the time. Now, I mentioned Stardust. Yeah, let me see. Okay, so that was 8 measures, right? So you could call that A, B, or you could just call it one long A. Now, slightly different at the end because it has to wind down. And although this might not be technically correct, I would probably refer to that tune as an AA tune. Just 2 halves, no bridge in the middle. But most songs have a bridge. Let me see here. And of course, now every song I'm thinking of has a different form. Irving Berlin was like famous for having weird forms or not stock forms. So if I think of an Irving Berlin form, Cheek to Cheek, that actually has a C section. So does Sleigh Ride. Okay, let's talk about those 2 tunes. Cheek to Cheek. Now the A section. Different words. Repeat the melody. This is my second A. instead of going back to the A, now we have this C section. And now the A. So you kind of burp between the B and the last A. And when you have a tune that's a little more complicated like that, there can be some discretion used in what you improvise over. So, like, sometimes the musician will not play the C section and leave the C section for later, and everyone just improvises over the A and B, and that can be confusing. Okay, so I mentioned sleigh ride. Wait, it's not July. I shouldn't play this. Oh, stop. Beginning again. We could argue A again. Now my bridge. And then my last A. But we had a C section. Whoa. Come on. Back to the A. So then everybody kind of has to agree. So of course, it may be confusing when you listen to a song as to what's going on. But these different sections, even if they're not organized in specific song form, A, B, A, do distinguish themselves. And as you kind of get lost in a tune, and if I get lost in a tune on the bandstand, which can happen, and I'm really just totally flummoxed, I kind of have to wait till the next section of the tune. And then oh, there it is, there it is, bang, thank you. Right? But I've told you, several times before, so you've probably heard me say this, but in case you haven't or you're new here, for me, the main way of finding myself back, if I get distracted, it becomes like a focus issue sometimes for me. And I drift off and I'm like, huh? Oh, what happened? Right? And which was my lot in life 20, 25 years ago, a lot more than it is now. And now I don't take ADD meds, so go figure. But we all find our path to it. I could talk a lot about that. Okay? And what you'll hear me do is I'll find the melody. Now, in that case, I'll know where the melody is, but I might not know what I'm supposed to do with it. Or I might be kind of lost and I figure out what the melody is there so I can remember what the chords are. I can't remember the chords. So in other words, I don't think of the form, I don't think of the structure, I think of the tune itself. Now, let's see how I'm doing with regard to this question, and this is the last one. So here's my suggestion. How does Joe Holt keep track of the tune when he's improvising? Is it the chords? Is it timing? Is it the marker note in the tune's melody? Is it something else? Okay. Now as I read this, there's a very clear answer. I got 4 choices and it's D. Because he said, is it the chords? Is it the timing? Is it a marker note in the tune's melody? Is it something else? It's something else. Because I'm not keeping track through thinking about anything. It's like being aware of the chords. And a lot of jazz musicians, the chords are just, that's all they think about. And they're always aware of it. Right? Uh, but no, I'm not. I'm turning off my brain, ideally, which I haven't been doing in my playing. This is not the world's best playing here for me, but it gets the point across. Everything's got a context, and hopefully I'm inside my proper context. So is it the chords? No. Is it timing? Well, of course, because timing is necessary to get anything across. Uh, but it's really an awareness of where you are in the structure as you feel your way through it. So, yeah, kind of. Is it a marker note? Well, those marker notes are really, you know, important. And here's a complete departure from what the intention here is. One of the jobs of the accompanist is sometimes for singers is when there is a harmonically weird place that you make a note for yourself in the chart, and then that's where I need a chart even if I know the tune, because I might forget what I'm supposed to do. And that is, find a way to mark the note so that the singer has a reference. Okay, I'll give you this illustration. I don't think my daughter will mind I tell you this. What she's going to mind is that I'm telling you this, but not that I tell you this. That doesn't make sense, but it will in a second. She'd be just as happy if nobody knew she did this. But how we did it, she'd be fine sharing. So when she was 9 years old, she actually appeared on 2 CDs. One was my He's Stepping Out CD, which was my children's songs, most of which I originally wrote for a children's choir in a church. And years later, I recorded them with the rhythm section, and I mostly sang them. And okay, I'm not going to say anything else. I'll just say that. And another was a band leader I worked with had my daughter Cherie and I come into a recording studio and record an extra song so it could be a bonus track on a CD. So on that He's Stepping Out recording, I wrote a song for my daughter to sing. Not one of the ones I had written before for the children's choir. I haven't played it in forever. I don't even know what key I played it in. I played it all wrong. But you get the sense that it's actually a tricky melody. Ah. What is it? Okay, if you don't play something for 20 years and it's kind of unique and you don't remember it, you shouldn't try to do it in public, right, man? And it's probably not the key I did it in, which is partly the confusion. Okay, close to that. But the point is, for a 9-year-old to sing that and nail all the pitches, it's not easy. And what I did, and this is the thing, I made a track where I played the melody, a melody track. So she heard all the notes in her headphones, but nobody else heard them. And that track never made the CD. And if you listen, and right now, it is going to come off of Spotify and those platforms, because someday I'll redo that CD. Right now, it's still there. So if you go to my profile on whatever platform you use, you'll find the He's Coming Out CD, Listen to Come as a Child. And you'll hear Cherie, and I'm so embarrassed I don't know my own tune. But, par for the course. You'll hear Cherie nail all those pitches because I gave her marker. I don't think she needed the marker, and of course she couldn't nail those pitches if she didn't have the ability to do it, and she was fantastic. So If she didn't have those markers, would she have known where she was? Maybe. Or is that a hard tune for somebody to hum along and keep their place in? Maybe. Right, so let's just see what else is in here. All right. How does Joe Holt keep track of the tune when he's improvising? He lets go. That's what he does. He lets go of trying and clicks another place, flips a switch. Is it the chords? Chords are part of it. Is it timing? Timing's part of it. Is it a marker note in a tune's melody? Is it something else? That something else is just experience, ultimately, right? Down the gremlins, or ignore them, that want me to think. I'm going to play it like I'm accompanying a singer. And you'll have no problem keeping the melody in your head, right? Or humming it. So as long as I played the structure of the tune and kept it intact, it was easy to hear, right? And I feel like I'm repeating myself over and over again now by saying, I think the main thing that keeps the melody accessible when I play is that I seek to be creative in that format, making adjustments, changing the texture, sometimes changing the harmony. But my go-to is not to change the harmony as my starting point of defining what jazz is. And that is not necessarily the contemporary mindset. So did I finish the story about Hank Jones? Yeah, because I think I said to Paul, I'm sure he reharmonized the out of it. Because I remember seeing a video of a live concert someplace, and the camera guy was on stage, just walking around with Hank Jones and Chick Corea. Hank Jones was introducing Chick Corea. And, I don't necessarily equate, put Hank Jones in the Chick Corea space, right? But they were in the same space. It was an older Hank Jones, obviously, and I think he's playing something and Chick's watching, and then Chick sits down, and Hank Jones was going for the harmonic edges because Chick was there, and he was finding them, and he was really like engaging Chick, and it's oh yeah, ooh ooh oh cool, and that's which is what musicians do, particularly jazz musicians. That a cool sound, which that cool sound has nothing to do, at least very possibly, with the song itself, except they gave you an opportunity to play that cool song. If you go back to like the intent of the phrase or the lyrics or something, nah, that's not where that comes from. That comes from like, I got this cool thing, check it out, right? And that's the kind of thing that will obscure the melody and make it harder to listen to. And does that make it bad? No. Does it make it wrong? No. Does it make it undesirable for some? Absolutely. Is it related to why fewer people follow jazz now than did in the 1940s? Absolutely. Does that mean right, wrong, better, worse? No, unless you're an absolutist. What? Yeah, so... So in terms of like contemporary, jazz, that could be considered lame, and it's kind of lame, but I was trying to demonstrate just that the melody was always accessible because it was always being referenced. So I hope that makes sense. I'm going to just take one more look at this email, and yeah, effort. And I guess I'll say this. When someone is learning to play jazz, and singers go through this a lot, while all the crazy improvisation is going along, they might hum to themselves. Otherwise, they're going to feel they get lost and they won't know where they are in the tune. To me, as an instrumentalist, I'm not a singer, so I can't pass judgment on singers. But as an instrumentalist, you need to be able to let go of that. You need to be able to be inside the tune and not get lost, right? And some jazz makes it a real challenge to not get lost. And I know of one singer who, because I'm on stage with this singer, I can hear that the singer hums the melody throughout all the improvisations. In that way, this person knows where they are at all times when they came in. There's never a guess. There's never a whoops, where are we, what do we do? And anybody can get lost, right? But it's also a defense mechanism against all the crazy places that thing could go. So the procedure my friend is doing is a procedure that a lot of people do. And the challenge would be, not to do that and see if your experience is any lessened. Because if you're not trying to keep track of the melody, you might be able to get pulled in to the things the musicians are doing more deeply. I know what this one particular singer's afraid of is, then they won't be able to get out again when they need to. So it all makes sense. But interesting that he brings up humming, because that's kind of a thing, one of many, many things that are a part of what we do, including just, humming an improvisation or singing the improvisation to help you hear it. So that whole vocal connection is there. So I hope this made sense. I hope this was satisfactory. And we do this every Wednesday, and I'm so far not having trouble coming up with topics. Feel free to suggest one. If I can make it work, I will. No guarantees. And keep in touch, especially if you're in a position to maybe, be somewhere where I am at some point. Keep in touch with the schedule. And I'll see you tomorrow for Piano for My Friends. Thank you so much.